Hi, I am Tony, and this is my wife Margaret, and I want to talk to you about a subject that I know very well. The subject is depression. I have been depressed most of my life. It got so bad that I got hospitalized twice with a major depression. The first time was when I lost my job, and when a man loses his job, he feels and thinks that his world is coming to an end because he sees his role as the provider of the house. When it stops, he stops being the man that he wants to be. I went to the hospital, I received many antidepressant medications, I received psychotherapy. Eventually I got a little bit better, I was released from the hospital. I went home, but I was still not well enough to resume my work as a therapist. A week later, my daughter attempted suicide. And again, a crisis occurred, which sank me a second time into a deep depression because I felt responsible for her attempting to commit suicide. So now, I was hospitalized a second time at the psychiatric hospital with my daughter also being a patient there. And one day was a very sad day in my life. It was painful when I went to the dining room and I was eating and I was not allowed to talk to my daughter. Can you imagine not being allowed to talk to your daughter? And the reason was because that would interfere with the therapeutic process. I should also say that my mother had a melancholic personality. She was sad most of her life. And I have probably inherited a genetic tendency from her toward depression. One day was also very memorable in that I wanted to commit suicide. I had reached the end of my rope and I actually went to a gun shop trying to buy a gun. Fortunately, the gun shop was closed. Later on, I was diagnosed as having the diagnosis of bipolar type 2, which is a milder form of regular bipolar with the normal fluctuations of mood, very big fluctuations. And I received many antidepressant medications and they were somewhat effective, but in reality I hated taking medication. It felt like I was putting poison in my body. The depression had multiple consequences, and one of them was, of course, that my marriage suffered, and I want my wife to give a little report to you to tell you how bad it really got.
Tony's right in telling you that he's been depressed most of his life. When we first dated, he was a very quiet type of guy, and I just thought he was quiet. I didn't have any idea that it was depression that really affected him. And we dated for about 18 months before we got married, and things seemed to be okay for the first 6 months or so after we got married, and then things started to change, and he became irritable and moody, and things had to be done his way, and we ended up having 3 children together, and that added more confusion to him and more irritability, and it became very difficult to run a household and keep him happy and kids under control and happy and healthy. And so there came a time in my life when I decided that I had had enough, and I felt responsible for my children going through the upheaval of living with someone with depression, and I felt responsible for the effect that it had on not only myself but for my kids. And I decided that the best thing to do would be to leave. And so I made plans to do that, and I did leave. And I took my kids and we left, and we were gone for a little over 2 years. And at that point, my goal was not to be divorced. My goal was to have my husband realize that he needed help and he needed to find a solution. He did not want to take the antidepressants. We'd been through that route. I begged him to take things, and he'd start them and then stop them and start them and stop them, and I couldn't live like that, and nor did I expect my children to live in that kind of condition. So that was enough for him, and he got the help that he needed and went for the counseling, and he went on a search to find something of a natural quantity that would make him have the same effect as an antidepressant, but that would not have the toxic effects that an antidepressant can have on a person. And so that's the start of the Provanix story for him and for us. And we eventually got back together. But through all that, because of the rockiness of the antidepressant, or the lack of taking the antidepressants and the depression, we went through a lot of financial pressures as well. And if you're dealing with someone with depression, you know that that's a real a pressure on any kind of relationship. The pressure of financial struggles, the ups and downs, the bill collectors, we've had them, and the losses of both the emotional, the financial losses can be a real problem. But our goal here is to just give you encouragement and to let you know that there is hope and there's help, and there is basically help at the end of the line here. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my husband.
So I went on a quest for a natural remedy. I hated taking antidepressants with a passion. So I started reading books. I went on the internet, and eventually I found a product that really made a difference in my life. The product is called Provanix, and it is used for both depression and anxiety, and quite effective. It is a totally natural product. You don't need a prescription from a doctor. And so I now have a website where it is further explained. The website is entitled provendepressioncure.com. Today, I dare say that I am a happy person most of the time. Of course, I have my days when I don't feel good, but I think that is just part of life, right, Margaret?
Yeah.
Don't you think I'm a little happier now?
I think you're a whole lot happier.
Okay, that is good to hear.
Yeah.
And so in future videos, which we want to make pretty quick, we want to discuss other methods that are very effective as well. Methods that I have learned, that I have experience with, and that have really given me more meaning to my life. Also know that when you buy the product Provanix from our website, 10% of the proceeds of this business that I have will go toward a humanitarian project in the third world. I want you to check out my website. I want you to buy the product. If you don't like it, you get your money back, and you may get just as happy as I am. There is light at the end of the tunnel.